Hello, everybody. I felt like making this video this morning. We're still in the coronavirus. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, and I'm going to be in the 5th chapter of Mark. As you recall, I've already said that I love the book of Mark, and so I want to be in this book today, and I'm going to start at the first verse in chapter 5. And it said, they came over the other side of the sea into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, he, being Jesus, immediately they met him a man out of the tombs, a man with an unclean spirit. What had happened was in chapter 4, there comes a storm on the sea, and I believe that's the chapter that Jesus walked on the sea. But anyway, yes, I'm pretty sure it was. So here Jesus steps off the boat, and immediately this man meets him out of the tombs with an unclean spirit. So that's what the storm was about. Maybe not all about. There might have been another reason for it, but the storm came in chapter 4 to hinder Jesus from getting to the man with the unclean spirit. So now Jesus is there, and it says, who had his dwelling among tombs, and no man could bind him, not with chains. So this is a natural story. I mean, it happened, true story, but there's all kind of spiritual connotations in it that I can see for me. So it said no man could bind him, no, not with chains. There are people that you can't bind. They're not going to be bound with any kind of authority. You can tell them what the Word of God says. They're not going to be bound with that. The Word of God tells us to forsake not the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, something like that. And people that they had opportunity to go to church, and didn't do it like they need to. Now we're in a coronavirus, and we'd all, I think, like to go to church. I've said in another broadcast that people they'll say, "Now get off my back, Brother Dale." They haven't told me personally, but in their minds, I'm thinking, and they'll say, "Get off my back, Brother Dale." I go to church, when I don't have to mow my yard on Saturday night. I go on Saturday night when y'all have it, but if Alabama's not playing, you know what I'm talking about. So had his dwelling among tombs. He met Jesus out of the tombs. Are you dwelling among tombs? There's people that's dwelling among tombs. They're living in the past. All their days are spent looking back at what didn't go right for them. I think you ought to get out of the tombs. So, somebody says, let's go in the shoe store. Some lady tells another sister, say, let's go in the shoe store. I said, I'm not going in there. Well, why not? Because that lady wouldn't take a pair of shoes back from me 20 years ago. Well, go on in there. That lady's probably done deceased or at least not working there. Maybe she retired. Maybe it's her granddaughter working in there. That, to me, is living among the tombs. As the old country song that Randy Travis said, we're always digging up bones. So, and no man can bind him, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broke into pieces. Neither could any man tame him. I call him Brother Tongue, because that tongue is something that no man or brother or sister can tame. So, and no man could tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. In another video I made, I was talking about people that oppose himself. He was cutting himself. That kind of person you don't have to do anything to. You just wait around long enough and they'll cut themselves. They're their own worst enemy. And cutting himself with stones. Well, when he saw Jesus afar off, He ran and worshiped him. Ran and worshiped him. Is that the way you do when it's time to go to church? Do you run to the church house? I remember when I first started out in this way down on Burns Avenue almost 43 years ago, it seemed to me that we would just run into each other's arms. We're so happy to see each other. Them old brothers and old sisters would get to Burns Avenue an hour before the thing started because they wanted their seat that they would have been used to. So when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him. Let me back up. We're talking about Jesus coming and this man with unclean spirit needing him and all those storms kicking up. That's the way it does in life. Just as sure as you start to do something for God, whether it be go to church or whatever, Satan starts up his activity. Linda and I, we had 2 children, and they were good kids for the most part. They were very good, and they would be good. But when we started a church, those 2 good kids would start acting like crazy kids sometimes. That's Satan kicking things up like he did for Jesus, trying to hinder you. And I remember once I was going to go to Higdon, I believe it was, and I stopped in Scottsboro to get gas, and I went in this convenience store, and while I was in there, I had a wardrobe malfunction. And I'm thinking, okay, what I do? Yeah, it's about midway for me. I told you in another video that I live about 40 minutes from Gurley, so that's about midway to Higdon, I guess. And do I go on? Do I go back? If I go on, I always start early, and that's a good reason to start early if you have something like that. So there was a Kmart at the back in the shopping strip, and I went over there. I was pretty heavy, a little heavy now, but I was pretty heavy then, and I wore an odd size in pants, a 44-29, I think. I'd never bought a pair of pants. In all them years, Melinda had always done that. But I went over there, and they had, and then you got to match the color of your shirt and wardrobe. And they had 2 pair of pants that would fit. I got one, tried it on in a little dressing room thing, went and paid for it, went back, took the tags off, and changed outfits, and went on to Higdon. And we had a wonderful service there. I was so glad that I went through that trouble. Another time I was preaching this years ago, and I had one of those reversible belts that you could put it on brown, and then if you had something else that you needed to wear, you could put it on black, and you reversed it. I'd reversed that thing evidently so many times that it wouldn't hardly hold. And right up in the middle of me preaching, that thing came apart. The buckle went into the floor. I just reached and grabbed the leather part. We reached down and picked up the buckle, set it on the table there behind me, and just kept on preaching. So whenever you see things kicking up, things coming trying to hinder you, know that there's something good waiting on you, and maybe God needs you to go on. And when he saw Jesus far off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice, and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. I looked up Legion, and I can't remember exactly how many it was, but I'm thinking maybe 6,000. Let's just say it is for demonstration purposes. And he besought him that he would not send them out of the country. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and ran into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 and were choked into the sea. 2,000. If a legion is 6,000, that means there was 3 unclean spirits if it was divided equally into each one. And if I'm wrong, it's not exactly the numbers. There was unclean spirits in all those swine. and just one of them would be enough, but they had that many. And they that fed the swine fled and told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that was done. And they come to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And they thought it was told them how it fell to them that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coast. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but said unto him, Go home to the friends, tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. Go home. That's what we need to do. Men need to, when I was working, and years ago, we didn't have cell phones, but at the end of my day, I would call my wife and I'd say, I'm about to be on my way home. Is there anything you need? And if she said there wasn't anything she needed, I went right straight home. That's where you need to spend a whole lot of your time. And anyway, I hope this has made sense to you. Brother Lige Holland said he told me and Brother Jack Kelly that preaching's supposed to make sense. So I hope it did. I hope it not only did it make sense, but that it helped you. If it does, let me know. If you need anything else, let me know that too. I love you. And until I get to be with you next time.